floor to Estras. He will give the presentation. So good luck.
Perfect. Yes, thank you, Thomas. I will share my screen real quick, just so we can all see the presentation, and I believe it's sharing now. And yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Esdras Paraviso, and I'll be talking to you today about learning instruments for competencies development in Industry 4.0. And I'm just to present myself a little bit and give an overview of who am I. I'll talk a little bit about my background. And I'm originally from Brazil. I've majored in industrial engineering, both my bachelor and master's were done in Brazil at the Federal University of São Carlos. And I'm currently a PhD researcher in engineering design at the University of Cambridge in the UK. This is where I'm now currently. And I'm researching computer games for design creativity under the supervision of Professor Nathan Creeley. And my research now and my research in the past has involved a lot of gamification, games, and how can we use those type of strategies to develop better learning approaches to students in engineering degrees, and also for professionals in companies, both managers, engineers, and also operational people that work in the factory floor. And my idea here is to bring a little bit of those experiences that I had in the past working as a consultant for the university and for the labs in healthcare settings, industry settings, and devising these types of workshops that students can learn in hands-on activities. And the board game for Industry 4.0, that's the core thing that we are going to talk today, and bringing also my international experience. So I'm very glad to be here talking to a Dutch audience, because back in 2015, I did some studies abroad in Maastricht, down south from you guys. So it's a nice pleasure. I don't know anything about the language anymore, but it's always good to go back and see, go to the Netherlands and etc. So I'm happy to share my experiences also, that I've undertaken some research opportunities at the Denmark Technical University in Denmark, and also at TU Berlin, which were the partners that developed this large project that I'm going to talk to you about, Industry 4.0, and how to teach people how to transition towards this new paradigm that Industry 4.0 represents, was also with the guys from TU Berlin. So this is my background, and in the past, I worked with ergonomics and human factors, looking at workspace design, participatory design, and how games can be used in those contexts, trying to apply those games and approaches for simulation in terms of engineering education and engineering design. But everything was always pointing towards the Industry 4.0 and how can we use these as technologies, and how can we understand what Industry 4.0 is, what does it mean for our companies and for the work that we do in our factories, and how to transition towards this. So this is more or less everything that is on my background, and that's something that you're going to see throughout the presentation, that I try always to talk about the technical and the technological side of things, and also give a context about the workers and the people that work in the environments that we are designing, that we are giving to them as their workplace. So I believe that you will know even better than me what this image is saying. But the idea today is that I want to talk to you about what's Industry 4.0 and what are its implications. I want to discuss how can learning instruments and gamification help in this transition towards Industry 4.0, and what's this board game, the Industry 4.0 board game that I've developed in this research project that we had with the German partners. What is this board game and why should you play it? How can it help us to develop some competencies for Industry 4.0? So just to give an overview, and when we talk about this Industry 4.0, we are talking about different things in different places, but at their essence is usually the same. So Industry 4.0, this term, initiated in Germany from the Industry 4.0 in 2011 in one of their Hanover fairs that they had there, and they started this idea that digitalization and technology applied in manufacturing would become this next industrial revolution. And this terminology spread a little bit. Brazil also follows this terminology in terms of Industry 4.0 in Portuguese, but different countries have different names for the same phenomenon, that is the application of digitalization, smart manufacturing, and approaches for big data and analytics to be employed in manufacturing setting. So improving productivity and work conditions as well, and etc. So China has a program called Made in China 2025. In the US, it's more common to see industrial Internet of Things. Here in the UK, they talk about an industrial strategy, and in the Netherlands, it's more usual to call that the smart industry and these approaches. But in essence, they are quite similar. And to talk about Industry 4.0, and as I've already mentioned, Industry 4.0 is related to the new industrial revolution that we would be experience now, that is comes in the surf of these new technologies that we see applied in industry. And to give this context, we have to go back a little bit and take a look at how were the other industrial revolutions that we had in the world to understand how we come about the Industry 4.0 nowadays. So the first industrial revolution around 1750s started here in the UK with the steam engine, and with the especially used in the context of manufacturing focused on textile industries and the working conditions. So the core aspect here was that the mechanics and to take out people as powering the devices and powering the machines, and put some other means of producing the energy that we had to power these machines. And they used the water and steam, burning a lot of coal and burning a lot of fuel to try and make these machines work. And it started a very important process that was the first industrial revolution, but it had also some impacts in terms of work conditions and society. And we, back in the day, in that era, we saw a lot of work conditions that were not ideal, child labor and other problems for health and safety in terms of the people that worked in those factories. But fast forward a couple hundred years, and then we have the second industrial revolution, when the technologies evolved and electricity came about. And then with Ford in the US, we had the division of labor and how they separated and specialized the different tasks that the workers should do. And they created the assembly line, and everything, the parts became standardized and interchangeable, so you could use different parts for same parts for different projects. So you could improve and enhance the amount of products that you are going to make without a lot of customization. So one of the core things about second industrial revolution is that you improve the number, or enlarge the number of products that you're going to do. You're going to mass produce the cars, but you're going to only have a specific type of car, a black car, the Model T that Ford created, for instance. So this was about the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s in the US and Europe. And then in the 60s, more or less, with the advent of computers that were starting after the Second World War, in the 40s and 50s, the first computer came about, and the computers immediately got adopted by industry in order to control the processes, control the machines, and try to enhance productivity in the processes. And then we see a third industrial revolution that is employing electronics and IT systems to automate the production and to improve the productivity of the workplace. And we see discussions about what's the role of automation. Is automation going to replace people? And those discussions still happen today, and they started really early from the very onset of the third industrial revolution with the machines coming into the workplace. And this poster here is from the 1969, 1970s, from the Netherlands, and it shows really this tension between the people that work in the factories and their work and how they were understanding the role of the machines and how they were perceiving their role in these new factories that were coming about. So the idea is that we see the evolution of the technologies. These technologies have an impact in how people work, and we see, obviously, I showed the Charlie Chaplin Modern Times clip there. And so with the first industrial revolution, we change how people work. They do not need to power the machines anymore. They use the machines, but the working conditions are quite poor. We see that in the second industrial revolution, we have the division of labor, mass manufacturing, and we have the assembly lines. And then we see that in the third industrial revolution that we have the electronics and the computers helping out and assisting in the production planning and control. And now we see that what's the next evolution? What's the thing that is being called the Industry 4.0 and this fourth industrial revolution? Is this a connectiveness and of the cyber physical systems when people work together with the machines, data is exchanged interchangeably in real time, and the digital penetration of the whole product chain is spread out in a horizontal and vertical integration setting. So this evolution is what now we are seeing in terms of the current state of the world, more or less, even though it's been 10 years since the original term that coined the idea of Industry 4.0 in Germany. It's been 10 years already, but it's still spread out the degree to which the companies have adopted it and are transitioning towards this paradigm. And just to really drive the point that in terms of product variety, in the first industrial revolution, we had low product variety and low product output in the beginning, because it was much more manual, and the idea was that people still had to perform a lot of functions to be able to get the final product. With the second industrial revolution, the assembly lines and division of labor and the interchangeable parts enable us to increase the product output per type of car, especially if we standardize and only have one type of car that we make, we can become super specialized and divide the functions of the car that we want to make, so that we can have a very high output of the cars that we make and mass manufacture them. But then people do not want only the same black car as everybody else has. So we need to really focus on understanding customer needs and creating a way, devising a way to become and to enable customers to ask for the modifications and for the customizations, and to be responsive to the customer demands and try to enable them to do configurations. And this is something that we see nowadays that is a reality. And with the fourth industrial revolution, the idea is that this is going to be taken to the extreme. So the idea is that the ability to customize and to create products that are unique is going to be viable and economic, because the products and the production process in the company is going to be responsible and based on the technologies that we're going to implement in the company. So mass customization is going to be a possibility within the paradigm of Industry 4.0. And additive manufacturing, for instance, is a way to enable these possibilities of changing the shape of the products, devising new forms of implementing solutions, and etc. And we are going to discuss more of this Industry 4.0 characteristics in general. But really the core aspects of Industry 4.0 are related to the connectivity. Connectivity from manufacturing to support. So if you are doing within your factory, within your company, you have all the processes connected. So from the machines and from the tools that are operating in the drilling machines and etc., you have sensors that capture data. The sensors are connected to the cloud, and they send the data that they collect to the cloud, and the cloud interprets this data, analyzes it, uses algorithms and simulation and artificial intelligence to understand the patterns of the use of this drilling tool that you're monitoring, and you can interpret this data and provide information in real time for your operators that are in the field, for the people that are planning the production process. You can have this information in dashboards for your customers as well, because you can have services being exchanged between companies and factories. So you can become a service provider to other factories in a more efficient way. And this whole connectivity is also going to be from the customer to you, to your company. So the idea that we can have real-time data collection from the customer side in terms of the Internet of Things enabled devices, and the sensors that are there are continuously sending information to the company so it can evaluate and provide user support in terms of what they are going to need. Is it going to break anytime soon? Shall we send some replacement already, and etc. So this enables new business models, new business opportunities to appear, but it's supported by this idea of connectivity. And the connection is going to be not only among the data and information systems, but they are going to be also between humans. So the idea is that the people are going to be able to interact with these objects and systems via some novel human-computer interfaces. So augmented reality, virtual reality, and extended reality, and etc. are just a few of the ways that we can interact with data and visualize information in a more streamlined way to understand what are the patterns that the data is showing and what's the state of the system, how can we improve it, if we have a digital twin that represents all the different machines and sectors of the factory, the inputs from the customers, the inputs from the suppliers, how can we, with this whole visualization of the digital twin that we have from our factory, how can we use these devices and these systems to implement solutions, try out different simulations to see how can we optimize the process and improve it. So the humans and the systems, the robots and the machines, they are going to be connected and via those different interfaces. And the optimization and customization. So really the idea is that you can enable the high-level customization of your products. So the idea is that given all these flexibilities, the interoperability that you're going to implement in your factory, and the idea that the processes in the shop floor are going to be decentralized in a way, it's going to enable you to customize and optimize your factory, and those data connected support systems are going to enable you to optimize it and improve the situation for your factory. So these are the core characteristics of Industry 4.0. And then I'll lot of the question that comes is why? Why would we want those characteristics, and why should we pursue Industry 4.0? Because people from the studies and the literature that already looks at the Industry 4.0 implementation, we see that there's a promise of a massive growth in productivity because of these changing paradigms, not only in terms of the customization, that's something that goes in the direction of the customer needs. You see also productivity being increased because you're going to decentralize the decision-making processes, so you can have decision-making being done in the shop floor in real time based on the information that you get locally, and that reduces costs of and time loss in terms of the data sharing and information processing. So you can have gains in terms of the optimization and simulations that you run are also going to enable you to improve your productivity. You're going to create more automated situations that go even beyond what we have nowadays. And you're going to be able to create highly customized products at scale. So it's not only about customization, but also customization that's scalable for a large portion of the customer base that you have. And the question that becomes more salient here, and that's a point of caution, is also what is going to be the impact of Industry 4.0 in terms of employment and the professionals and the professions that exist. Is it going to increase or decrease or not affect how people work and how the jobs are being done currently? So there's obviously going to be an impact, but is it necessarily a bad impact or a good impact is something that's still being discussed in the literature, and there are cases that point both for improvements and cases that make, if you hire or if you buy a robot or an autonomous guided vehicle, you're going to lay off or fire some of the forklift drivers and etc. So there are both reports of both situations in the literature and from the case studies. So it's something that it's necessary to be discussed as well. But in terms of Industry 4.0, when you look at the literature, academic literature, and also from the consultancy companies and what people, when people try to implement Industry 4.0, they say that there are 6 guiding principles for Industry 4.0. And these principles, they are not technologies themselves, they are just the idea behind Industry 4.0. And the first one is virtualization. So this is the idea that we need the data and the information that exists in the real world, the physical world. We need that in the computer so we can run the simulation, so we can understand the data, so we can look at the patterns, and so we can simulate and optimize the processes. So this idea of virtualization is looking at what's there, how can we install sensors and get the information, but not only get this information, use it in a proper way that's going to help us solve the productivity problems that we have or to improve our processes. The next design principle of Industry 4.0 is decentralization. And decentralization is the idea that the processes in the shop floor are going to be able to decide by themselves what they're going to do. So there's a decentralization of the decision-making in the factory floor. So instead of having to have a central planning control software and department, you're going to let these machines that have intelligence in them and also powered by artificial intelligence and etc. They're going to be able to take some decisions based on the settings and the conditions that the planners set to them in terms of which batch to operate on and so on and so forth. So decentralization of decision making is a big thing within Industry 4.0. The modularity, both in terms of the products to enable this customization, but also in terms of the processes. So the machines and the production process itself is going to be modular in order to be able to interchange with the other machines and change from one site to the other more easily, and etc. And this also links with interoperability, the idea that both the robots and the people and different machines, they have to connect. And it's probably one of the most common issues in industry is that if you have a specific type of supplier giving you your robots or your PLM software or your PLC controllers for your production line, if you get machines or by other software from different vendors, you will probably have issues of compatibility and because things don't speak the same language. So the idea here of interoperability is really to be sure that we have this connection and these different opportunities to really connect. And the idea is that the workers are going to be able, via these different interfaces, to interact with the machines and the robots in a way that they can work together, not separated by the barriers that we usually have in the shop floor. The real-time capability is super linked with the idea that we can really have these sensors working in real time, getting this data and processing this data in real time. And the service orientation is linked to this idea that we can really create new business models and new opportunities for delivering value to the customers via using Industry 4.0. And there are several technologies that people link towards Industry 4.0. I've mentioned that some of them already, and I can just go through some of them highlighted here. Cloud technologies, cyber physical systems, cybersecurity, which is the basics that we always, every now and then, we see in the news articles saying that hackers broke into a database of some 5 million people and stole all their details. So cybersecurity, and especially in terms of industries, and when they get ransomwares and those type of problems, it's critical because they have to stop operations, that it can disrupt energy systems if you have systems and networks that depend on the operations that happen in the computers and etc., which is basically everything. So big data analytics and intelligent systems, the immersive technologies that I already mentioned, augmented reality, virtual reality, wearables, smart materials, those are the technologies that are currently linked with Industry 4.0, and they are going to be to a larger or extent used in the transition towards Industry 4.0 context for each company, depending on their needs. So just to give you an example of what would be such an example of Industry 4.0 application could be in terms of predictive maintenance. So we have a milling machine that connects with the cloud, sending data of all the status of every part of the machine, and the machine analyzes this data in terms of the measurements that they take from the product that's being processed there, and also in terms of the vibration, the temperature of the materials, all visual analysis as well in terms of dimensions and etc. And does the correlations, does the analytics, and it becomes the data that is collected from the sensors becomes information. So it's displayed to people depending on the interfaces that are available. It's going to become information. It's going to enable the person to take decisions based on the visualizations that they have. And these are going to become the solutions to help people to take evaluate what are the possibilities, what should we do, and then implement and make decisions based on all of this information. This can be applied to predictive maintenance to really not only perform maintenance when the machine breaks, and not only scheduled maintenance stops for the machine, but really analyze and see that, okay, every now and then when the machine starts vibrating higher than a threshold, it breaks. So we are going to stop that before it happens, because we saw that started vibrating at that moment as well. So you have the virtualization principle, that you get the information from the real world and throw it into a virtual environment that represents your real scenario. You have real data collection, real-time capability there, and you have the modularity in order to be able to rearrange your company and your shop floor in order to not stop the whole production process because of that. So yeah, this is an example, and there are some implications, right, of Industry 4.0 for the work that people do. And the most immediate of it is job automation. And this picture here, I put it there. It doesn't really make sense, but and if we think a little bit about in 2013, the Frey and Osborne researchers from the US, they said that every second job in the US is at a high risk of automation. And that was in 2013 and 10 years ago, basically. And nowadays, you probably have heard about the AI tools for creating art. And when I was working on my presentation, I went there, I typed futuristic factory, robots and sparks, and then the AI thing, it created this this illustration. So it's something that the AI created, and it's something that you wouldn't necessarily think about when you think about computers taking over people's jobs. So an artist is also feeling threatened by the possibility of AI taking over and etc. But there are a lot of discussion on what's necessary and who is being faced with the automation risk for their jobs. And they say that, okay, lawyers and more specific employees, they would be safer, and the more low paid and most vulnerable people would be waiters, cashiers, and etc. So there is this tension regarding the automation and the risk for employment. There's also a skill gap. So in terms of using technology, people do not necessarily know how to use technology. In terms of human-machine collaboration, there's also the need to build trust from humans towards to robots and etc. in order for them to be working together. There is a need to understand, for people to be able to better understand supply chain and customer relationships, and soft skills, creativity, collaboration, problem solving are also skills that people usually say that researchers usually mention that are lacking for the transition to Industry 4.0. So, and it's not only in terms of the skills that people are lacking, but there's also a managerial challenge, because managers struggle to devise a way to transition to Industry 4.0. So if we take a look at cases, and I have a bunch of examples that I can give, but some researchers from Denmark, from the research group that I was in Denmark back in the day, they performed several case studies in Denmark, and they saw that in the transition to Industry 4.0, the decision-making process was somewhat troublesome, because one of the participants that they interviewed said that they asked if they could get a cobot to see if they could find some use for it, and they already had one stored away somewhere, and it's super expensive. It's a robot that's collaborative and that you can use it in your productive process. But the decision-making process was not guided by a problem that needed to be solved. it was something that they experimented with and wasn't really employed in the process. So it really shows that sometimes, and for instance, with the IT system integration, the workers could not use most of the solutions that were implemented in this new system that it was highly digitized, this thing that was new. And so what they had to do was to tape a piece of paper to the machine screen and have a pen there hanging from an elastic band to document the items that they picked. And so this is the challenge that managers are faced nowadays, how to transition, how to make things connect when you're installing these new devices and etc. And this is the idea of using these learning instruments and gamification to try and help to develop skills and foster learning engagement towards Industry 4.0 and towards the technologies and skills that we need to use. And Learnstruments can take various forms. The colleagues from TU Berlin have developed several alternatives to Learnstruments. For instance, guidance in terms of 3D visualization in PDFs and that are interactive to help out people that are performing manufacturing tasks and assembly tasks as well. For instance, this one here that Yes, that I can show. It's a AR augmented reality showing the steps to perform the assembly of the motor here, that we have a compressor actually, and we have the 3D printed pieces as well, so people can follow each step of the augmented reality demonstration. And we also have instructions using augmented reality using augmented reality glasses, such as Microsoft HoloLens, so the person can see through and immediately follow the instructions that are given. And we have also instructions, these learning instruments, the whole idea of them is that the people learn while performing the tasks. So the thing records your motion using Microsoft Kinect for Xbox 360. So it's a depth camera, and then it shows you what are you doing, what if you're doing it correctly, what you have to do to improve your the process of assembly and etc. So the Learnstruments are a way to try and do that, and it has different modules, different alternatives, and it has the pathways for you to learn, and also gamification. And gamification is an approach that you probably are very familiar with, and it's the idea of using game elements. So we go for the games, see what works for the games, and try to use that in non-game contexts. And then we can see that on Waze, for instance, and Waze is that app for your phone that shows you the best route. But instead of using Google Maps, why would someone use Waze? Because Waze is a little bit gamified. So you can change your avatar there, you can change your car, you can connect with friends on Facebook, you can connect, improve your scores and the experience level, so that generates engagement and helps people to use the app. And that's interesting, for instance, when you're learning, you might be familiar with Duolingo. I'm in a streak of 600 days learning French on Duolingo, so I'm quite hooked on that, and it kind of works to keep us going in terms of the learning. And this basic idea is the same. So you connect with people, you have some goals and experiences and things to customize and to make things more interesting. And that's the idea that we took in our project, right? This project that was conducted by my Brazilian university, Federal University of São Carlos, partner university in Brazil, USP, and TU Berlin in Germany. We conducted this project. It was a 4-year project funded by CAPS and DFG from Germany, CAPS from Brazil. And the idea was that we got together in a very large project team led by Professor Enrique Rosenfeld and Professor Holger Kohl from Germany. And we had a lot of people over these 4 years. And the idea was that given our partnerships of over 20 years almost between Brazil and Germany, our universities. And this program that we applied for the grant, we got a grant to investigate matters related to smart manufacturing. This project was to really actually create something that would help in the transition of Brazilian and German manufacturing companies to Industry 4.0. So for us, really the challenge was that we have Industry 3.0 and we need to transition towards Industry 4.0. But we need to understand what are the challenges that exist to get to a more advanced paradigm in terms of Industry 4.0. And how to get there is really a focus of who are going to be the professionals of tomorrow, so the students, and who are the decision makers of today, so the managers, the engineers, and the people in the factory floor that have to take these decisions. And we wanted to focus both on students and professionals and try to devise ways using Learnstruments and gamification to have them learn about Industry 4.0 and how to get there. So the idea is that we have several outcomes from our website with reference materials, concepts, with videos explaining everything about Industry 4.0, virtual game, and the board game. That is one of the core deliverables of this project. It's released online. You can take a look at that later. I'll send the link in the chat. And the idea is that we took a look at games that already exist, and I hope that you guys have some experience playing games. And you might remember Civilization, which is a game for computer, but also there's a board game for that. Maybe Settlers of Catan, maybe Seven Wonders, you might be familiar with, and maybe Puerto Rico, also another game that inspired us. We took a look at these games, and these games, they have progression. They are challenging. They are not like just throw some dice and walk on a path. It's really something that you have to evaluate trade-offs, you have to devise a strategy, and you have to implement technologies that are going to get you to the desired state that you have. So we really devised a board game that really drives down towards some core learning objectives that I'm going to discuss in a few minutes. And this is more or less, this is how it looks nowadays. So we have game boards and we have people. And this board game, the core idea is that the learning goals, by the end of the game, the participants have a better understanding of what are the most important principles, technologies, skills, and areas related to Industry 4.0. So the idea here is really to understand, because as I've showed, there are so many different terminologies, technologies, and different ways of talking about Industry 4.0 that we want to provide a comprehensive way that you can understand what are the most important topics that you should be aware of and how those are connected, because it's not about only buying a collaborative robot and installing it in your factory. It's not about flipping a switch and then you have Industry 4.0. You really have to think about how those aspects are related. How what do I have to do in order to be able to get that technology to get to a more advanced state and to implement those? Because it is a process. Achieving Industry 4.0, going towards the Industry 4.0 paradigm is a process and not an off-the-shelf product. The most usual thing for us back in Brazil and in Germany is the same, is to hear stories of directors that went to conferences or those fairs that they showcase the technology, or when they talk with consultancy companies, that the consultancy wants to sell €1 million project to install sensors across the factory. And for instance, in Brazil, something like that happened. They installed 1.5 million reais, Brazilian currency, in the factory on sensors. And they came to us in the university asking for help, because they didn't know what to do with the data. So we install the sensors, we have all the data, but we do not know what to do. And it's something that happens systematically day after day when discussing technology. So our idea with the game is to discuss what are these technologies, how they are related, and how do you implement them in a comprehensive way, in a step-by-step way, so that by the end you have something that really matches your objectives and your company goals, and not really is just for the buzzwords or for the technology per technology. So that's the idea of the game. And the workshop that we created to go with this game is a workshop of 4 hours for 20 people or so, people playing in groups, and we compete. So we have groups, different groups are different factories, and they have to compete to get most money, to get the victory points, and to hire people, and etc. And the idea is that in the beginning of the workshop, we give an overview of the Industry 4.0 concepts. We run the game, and so all the technologies get bought and sold. You have to have enough money, so you have to produce goods in order to sell them and get money. You have to hire people because you have to have workers in your factory. And you have to develop competencies in terms of operations management, people management, and technology management in order to be able to really go forward in Industry 4.0. And then we discuss by the end of the game, give practical examples, and see how the experience from the game relates to practice. And this is where the learning experience comes full circle, because the idea is that from the game experience, we can discuss and see, okay, how does that feel for your day-to-day life? How does that relate to your experience in your company, and so on and so forth. So this is more or less, this application was in June, last June, in Brazil. Yeah, we had the company hired us to run this. I went there with them and we run the workshop. So it's groups of people that compete against each other. So we have scores, and so that we have engagement, but we have collaboration among the team members. So everybody can interact and discuss the concepts and really work on those trade-offs and understand what are the relationships. And the idea is that the idea of the game that's underlying everything that everything for the game is that we give you your factory. Your factory is currently in the Industry 3.0 standard, that you have the basics to work. You have production department with some machines, you have an ICT department that has just the bare minimum, and you have sales, quality, and legal departments that are also in the factory, and you have basic workers that are technical workers. And the idea is that you get some objectives to run your factory. So you have objectives, business goals, like to improve the customization of the products, or to improve the service from data collection with customers, and etc. And the idea is that by the end of the game, you have to take all the decisions in terms of which technology are you going to pursue, which sectors are you going to invest on, which different areas of the company are going to try to improve, to get to the excellence certificates that are linked to Industry 4.0, and then you can show that you achieved the objectives, and then you get the points, and then we see who won the game. Usually people don't get too invested in terms of the points. They just scream at each other or something, just kidding. But yeah, people get very invested, and they really want to see, and especially when it's same company, different sectors, they always try to see and do some benchmarking and see what people are doing, what are their strategies. So it's a nice environment, and it's by the end of the game, they can discuss when it's the same company and people are discussing from different departments. They can talk about the different perspectives of the company related to the challenges of the game. When it's different companies that are playing the game together in the same setting. They can exchange experiences from different sectors in the industry and etc. So it's usually a really nice experience that we run it with several institutions, both in Brazil, Germany, and the Netherlands. So I went to University of Twente in Escada in the beginning of the year, and we run the workshop there, usually with very good feedback and different companies from different areas, both in Brazil and also in Germany. And the idea, just to show you some feedback, usually it's always they really understand, and we do feedback to evaluate the perception of learning of the participants and also to support our research and the continuous development and improvement of the game. So the game experience increased their understanding of Industry 4.0, the idea that Industry 4.0 is a transition process, the design principles, the technologies. So it really improves this understanding of the people that participate in the game, and it's a very solid beginning or start point that people can then go back and discuss with their managers, with their workmates and their colleagues on how to devise their own strategy to go towards Industry 4.0. And important, but sometimes forgetful, they usually say that the game is super fun, and 94% of the respondents say that the game is fun. So that's also something that we look forward to deliver an experience that's both insightful in terms of the learning aspects and also fun, because it's a way to get them engaged and to really solidify these experiences in terms of the learning. And from the experiences that students, they say that they learn a lot more than they usually are taught in class. It's fun, and they have really to put thoughts into how to move ahead. So it's not an easy game, but it's a game that's actually something that challenges people, and it takes away tiredness apparently, and people usually like it. Makes researchers and also professionals have said that sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming in the beginning, but throughout the game, and if you have experience with board games and games in general, we always know that in the beginning it takes a while for us to understand how things work, but once it gets going, it goes very well, and we actually can learn and have fun to play. And that leads me to an invitation. The colleagues at HEN, they have organized an workshop for this board game. And if you guys are interested in that, this board game workshop is set to be happening at HEN on Thursday, October 13th. So you feel free to take a look at the website. This QR code shows this website here that is on the screen, and we can send that in the chat as well, maybe if Thomas is there. Yeah, because I now don't see anybody in the screen, so it's always fun. But yeah, so this board game workshop is going to happen. It's a 4-hour activity. I'm going to have all the materials there. Thomas is going to be helping me run the game, and it's going to be an opportunity for us to really go in more detail on the specific design principles of Industry 4.0 that I discussed, and see the relationship of the precedents and the requirements that we need for more advanced technologies. So the idea is to really get a sense of how, given a business goal, given a business objective, how do I decompose that in terms of the technologies that I will need, in terms of the actions that I will try to perform, and how to relate that back to some actionable ideas to our practical life. And just going towards the closing of the presentation here. So yeah, automatization, really. Yeah, and I showed these questions that guided us throughout the presentation. And I hope that it's a little bit clearer now about what's Industry 4.0, the implications, the idea of using Learnstruments and gamification. And this brief overview of the board game, I think, could help you to understand why it's interesting. And if you take home any message, maybe you can take a message that Industry 4.0 is not a synonym of implementing a single technology. So it's not, I'm not saying that Industry 4.0 is something that you flip a switch, install sensors everywhere, or install a cobot in your factory floor, or you start using some machine learning and algorithms for simulation and AI and big data and etc. It's not that technology alone that's going to say, and it's not, the idea is not to have Industry 4.0 for the sake of Industry 4.0. The idea is that all your infrastructure, processes, and people, they are necessary and fundamental for you to have a successful transition to Industry 4.0. When you implement the technology together with infrastructure, processes, people, and management, that becomes the basis for you to build upon it and achieve a very successful implementation of these technologies that go towards your business goal. And the work for the workers and for us planning other people's work, it is, some professions are going to disappear, some are going to emerge. Work is changing, and we have to keep an eye out for that, and we have to be proactive in terms of discussing that with people. And the learning, flexibility, and adaptability are key in that context. And it's really necessary for us to remember that and try to devise ways to promote learning and education in this context of Industry 4.0. That's basically what I wanted to say. Thank you very much for your attention. Dankjewel. If you have questions and comments, feel free to ask them. And this is my contact. If you want to get in touch, feel free to do so. I'm on LinkedIn, email, and the internet in general. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Estra. I've got a quick question, actually. Oh, yeah. For all the people that are there, could you have a look at the chat? There is an evaluation form, if you could fill that in. And furthermore, I've got a question, like how does the game help you to solve the problem of the manager? The manager has a new idea, he's been to a fair, he's found some nice new technology, he wants to implement that. How does the game help solve that problem?
Yeah, so that's the core thing, right? The game is going to help. If the manager plays the game, they are going to understand that's not, if they go to the fair and someone says cobots, the future of the industry is cobots. They need to install cobots. And what usually happens is the director or the CEO comes from the fair and says, oh, we need to install cobots. Buy cobots, here's the budget, and install that. And the core thing of the game is that we show through the game that it's not about this single technology. It's about all the processes and the developments that you have to pursue in your factory, standardizing the processes, improving the quality, formatting the process in terms of lean manufacturing if you really want to drive down and improve your process. So you have to pursue a lot of smaller goals in your factory before you get to the point of installing the cobots. So the idea of the game,
if I understand it correctly, the game is there to broaden the perspective that it's not a single technology, but there's more.
Exactly. And this is really something that the participants can experience that and take that learning to their bosses and to discuss that with their departments and to come up with a strategy that's geared towards the goals of the company in a broader sense, rather than just running around saying, buying stuff that's disconnected and etc.
Yeah, I see also a question from Ben. Yes. Have you already published your paper, and where could we find it?
Yes, we have a couple papers that are out regarding the board game. If you scan the QR code, you can find my Google Scholar page, and there you can find all my papers. And there are a couple there that are talking about the game. So I'm on Google Scholar and also on ResearchGate. If you ask the papers from there.
When Cynthia is sending the mail, we can send the link to that paper as well.
Yes, exactly. And I will send you some of the board game website. I'm sending on the chat the link for the board game website so you can have more information about the board game. I'm sending also a video that you guys can watch later that shows the perspective. You are tired of my voice, I understand, but then in this video, other people talk, the professors from Brazil talk. It's subtitled in English, so it should be fine. And some participants that had just played the game from companies in Brazil, they talk about their experience, so you can take a look and see what they talk about. And I'm also sending the video series discussing the design principles of Industry 4.0, and there is also a game for or a video explaining for how the game works, specifically the board game. And then it's me again explaining the rules, so sorry about that.
Okay. Are there more questions from any of the participants? I don't know if Claudia has any questions, or Jelle.
For me, all clear. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, and well, if nobody's going to ask anything, but usually people ask, oh, it's usually Industry 4.0, but what's next? Is Industry 5.0 a thing? And my friend that did his PhD about this topic, that worked in the same project as me, he got this question in his PhD defense. And there is also already being talked about Industry 5.0, and it's something that's somewhat more recent. And then the focus shifts a little bit, and it's being talked specifically within the context of the European Commission and in Europe. And the idea here is that we take the technologies from Industry 4.0 and we focus on not only on the productivity and etc., but to give that a focus on sustainability, people, and resilience. And the technologies are basically the same: human-centric solutions, bio-inspired technologies, smart materials, real-time based digital twins and simulation, and cyber-safe data transmission, storage, and etc., and artificial intelligence. But the core idea is that we focus on sustainability, people, and resilience in terms of our outcomes. So it's not only about the productivity and the shareholder value at the end of the day, but also the stakeholder value. So that's just an...
I see also a comment currently just coming in from Robin. Interesting, yep. As well as the ethical side of using the technology. Technology possible is not always a successful idea from a change management perspective.
Exactly. Yes, that's a very good point, and it's something that when we played the game in 20, Thomas was there playing the game, and so he has some first-hand experience in that. And if you remember, in the game board we have the departments. We have the production department, we have the IT department, we have sales, we have quality department, and we also have a legal department.
Yeah.
And the legal department is something that we debated on whether to add it to our factory or not, but it's super important, exactly because it goes towards this ethical side and the new business model side. Because when you are talking about data, the data collection from the users, from the factory, from the workers, if you're going to use wearables and collect data about how people are performing throughout their workday and etc., that can be a little bit problematic in terms of the surveillance and in terms of how you process this data, how we're going to store this data. In Europe, you have GDPR or something similar to GDPR. That's the name that they have here in the UK. So you have
Netherlands,
really...
we call it the AVG.
Exactly. So it is really something that it has to be considered from different aspects of the ethical perspective, and that's why we have the legal department there, that we have to reevaluate these things. And it's a discussion that usually comes up by the end of the game as well. Is it worth implementing it? What's the role of states and larger bodies like European Union and other areas of the policy-making side of things? What can they do to direct us? And the idea is not to have a factory that's completely devoid of people, that they tried to do that in the 80s with the dark factories and etc. That doesn't work. But we really want to enrich the jobs. We want to improve the competencies of the people and develop them. And this is something that we have in the game, actually, because we have 3 levels of workers throughout the game. And in the beginning, all the workers are technical level workers, and throughout the game you have to train your workers and you have to invest in people management in order to show really this idea that in order to advance towards Industry 4.0, you have to establish a process of negotiation with the workers. You have to make them aware that things are going to change. It's not something that is going to be detrimental to them necessarily, and really strive towards this new paradigm. And I have something here as well that is, yeah, so from that paper that the colleagues from the Netherlands published doing the case studies, they have one of the other cases that they report is that the cobot that was supposedly going to help in the company, they laid off one of the workers, and then the robot couldn't do all the tasks. So half of the tasks that the person did, the robot couldn't do. So the worker that remained had to do all of his tasks, plus the tasks that the robot couldn't do. So they had to do even more work, and that creates stress. And it's something that they discussed a lot in terms of how to manage this process, the change, and etc. So yeah, that's a very nice idea to keep an eye out as well. So thank you for the comment and the question.
Thanks a lot. I don't know if there are more questions from the audience. Otherwise, I would say we wrap it up, and I want to thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much.